Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Well, happy Sunday morning to you, and welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown, or welcome back if you've been with us before. This morning we're going to talk about something that sometimes can be a little bit emotional, and that is organ transplants or organ donations from people who have passed away. Next Sunday we're going to be celebrating a special day called the Donor Sabbath, and it's when our own local Midwest transplant network, along with other networks, around the nation, are going to be celebrating a day when we actually stop and encourage people to think about organ donation. So, as we do that, my guest this morning is going to be Marjorie Comer, who is an ambassador for the Midwest Transplant Network, and we're going to be talking a little bit about why this issue is so important to her and why we should care about it as well. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute, so please stay tuned.
Once I quit playing football, I still kept up with the eating, the amount of calories I wasn't exercising, so the weight started adding on. Dr. Lou is very knowledgeable in the work he does. He also has a program set up that has support systems in place for you. You'll go through the seminar at first. He'll give you the different examples of surgeries you can have to see which one works best with you. He will also sit down with you and discuss the options, what he feels, but he'll work with you the entire time. Mercy has their gastric bypass program here. They have all kinds of resources and support systems in place. They want to see you succeed, and they're here to help you the entire time, even after the surgery.
Well, thanks for being with us again this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. Our guest this morning is Marjorie Comer, and Margie is a ambassador for the Midwest Transplant Network. So Margie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I actually moved to Joplin November of 2016,
Okay.
and I became an ambassador once we moved back to Missouri.
So been here about a year.
Yep, about a year. My husband was in the military, so we've spent 8 years living outside of Missouri. But I became an ambassador a year ago when I moved back, and I became an ambassador because my sister Amanda passed away June 2nd, 2014. So
She just passed another anniversary.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
So obviously, the lead up for this for our listeners is the fact that Amanda chose to, or you guys chose to make sure that you used organ donations for Amanda,
Yep.
so that her, even though you were losing her body went on to give life to other people.
Her legacy it lives on.
Yeah.
She had talked with my family. She decided to be an organ donor when she signed her license, and she was in a motorcycle accident. She was wearing a helmet.
Okay. It's just like, because some people out there are going to say exactly that. They're going to ask that question. But
Yep.
whether she was or she wasn't, it's still a tragedy. And God love her, that she signed that card on the back.
Yep.
Were you guys aware that she'd signed it when she did it?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
She'd had several talks, especially with my father about it, or our dad about it. And, we knew it was something that was important to her.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the motorcycle accident on June 1st, and then they declared her brain dead on June 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
And I had actually arrived into town shortly before they declared her brain dead.
Yeah.
And then Midwest Transplant Network was there, through the process of, what the next steps were. The hospital coordinator, she was fantastic to work
Sure.
with. Just holding her hand through the entire process.
Sure.
And then they've just been supportive ever since.
Well, and I think it's there's a few things happening here. Okay, first of all, you can do this a lot of different ways. One of them is just by signing the card. It's usually better to register in case they can't find the card, or the card's damaged, or any of those things, or their family member's not around. But they always usually, and they'll, even if you have not done that, sometimes folks will have talked to a family member anyway, and the family knows even if the card wasn't signed, because they will always come and ask at the moment of, at that moment. And sometimes it's, and again, I have never been in a spot where that's been done disrespectfully. And I've been at both hospitals here in town where it's happened. And people are so loving and kind, whether it was at Freeman or at Mercy. I got to say, everyone was loving, kind, but they still want to ask, and they do it very gently and very in a loving way. But they do want to ask, would you be interested in making an organ donation? And I've been around when several of those have been done. And each time, as I'm looking at the tragedy of the moment, I stop and think to myself, thank God there's going to be at least one little good that's going to come out of this tragedy. And that's one of the things that can happen in those moments,
Yes.
So she had signed the card. What did she register to and did all the things she was supposed to do? Okay.
Yep.
All right, we're going to have a little bit more information, but I'm going to say it once now. You can always register, especially at the time of the Sabbath here. Okay, so next Sunday for the Donor Sabbath at www, that was hard to say this morning, yestheywantme.com. Yestheywantme, just all spelled out. .com, okay, and that's you can register there and just have it on, in the national database and all that kind of good stuff to do those things. So tell us a little bit about the legacy of your sister. So how did that work? Do you know where all of the donations were made and what happened?
Well, she was able to donate her heart, her liver, her kidneys, and her pancreas. She wasn't able to donate her lungs because she aspirated, but she was also a tissue and eye donor. We have met her heart recipient and her liver recipient.
Wow.
We sent letters to the others, but haven't heard back. It's a tough thing.
Sure it is, and it's their choice and all that kind of good stuff. But I mean, I'm happy for you all that in this context, at least two of the donors were able to come forward and say thank you, and you've gotten and it's a strange thing. It's strange to talk about this way. Everybody's just like, oh, how can you talk about it that way? But that you guys, in some ways, have the joy of seeing the life that your sister's donation made possible.
In some ways, a little bit of closure.
Yeah.
But God really works in mysterious ways. It's hard to say it really was Amanda's time, but the coincidences or God's hand working in her death. Her liver recipient had Wilson's disease, and that's my maiden name, her last name.
Yeah, okay.
So that's, Wilson kind of fixed the Wilson's disease. His parents were married on September 2nd in the hometown where my dad went to church, St. Columban's in Chillicothe, Missouri.
Yeah.
And
just little connections that get us, that connect us throughout that tapestry that we call life. It's interesting.
And the liver recipient, his aunt and uncle played cards with my dad and my grandparents. I mean, we didn't know this. I mean, obviously it was years and years and years ago.
Right.
And then her heart recipient, her husband's name was Phil, and that was our dad's name. And then she lived on Washington Avenue, and my sister owned a nutrition store on Washington Avenue. So it was just
little things,
little coincidences that, kind of God being there at your shoulder.
And again, I'm going to say this because you're the first person that's ever talked about this on the air, but this is the way I feel about those things. Some people are going to listen to that and they're going to go, oh, those are just coincidences, no big deal. But I don't know. I just think that whether or not it was just the way that we're crazily networked throughout life, those are little things that just speak to our hearts that in some ways help affirm us from time to time, that just says we all are interconnected, that everything's connected in one way, shape, or form or another. And for those of us from a faith perspective, we can also say that God's part of that connectivity. That God in so many ways is the one that connects those dots. And whether we notice or not is just up to us. I think sometimes just the noticing of those little things is one of God's little gifts back to us that basically just says, I'm here, just paying attention. Here I am.
When she passed away in the Kansas City area, and those two recipients, they're not in the greater 30-minute Kansas City area. They're in Kansas, but one of them's 8 hours away. So they had to have an angel flight to get them to Kansas City,
Right.
just so that they could, have her organs.
Have the organ donation, yeah.
One of her one of her eyes, is in California for research. Another one was donated to a man in Ohio. We've heard from one of her tissue recipients, and she was able to graduate walk pain-free across the aisle at her graduation. So it's really neat.
Yeah. And again, there's just that sense of, even in the midst of tragedy, that life can, that there can be still gifts of life, even when someone's death is imminent, And so, I do think it's important for all of you to talk to your family members and to do those things about, the possibility, if that's something that appeals to you. Again, nobody takes any organs without, everyone's permission. And it's each person's, control of their body that says, I want to donate or not. Right. Nobody's going to harvest, an organ, without someone's, permission and their explicit, okay to that. But I do think it's really important that you all talk to each other out there about, especially with your family and your loved ones. So I'm really glad that you and your sister had this conversation with your dad, because then, everybody else breathes easy when it happens. I know sometimes families have just made the decision because they've never talked about it or didn't know. I've seen it, tragically, even when it was children, who've died. And the great gift of life that, now both parents worked in the medical field, and they just said, let's do it, because it was just a moment there that just basically said, even in the midst of their own pain and their own suffering, saying, if we can help somebody else, who's in a situation like this, just a true blessing, which is one of the reasons why, of course, we, that this was done and designed by people who do organ transplants for this to happen on a Sunday, which is why next Sunday is Donor Sabbath. So say a little bit real quick about Donor Sabbath.
So Donor Sabbath was established in 1997, and it's just a way that religious leaders can share more information about organ donation. All major religions do accept organ donation. Most.
I will say there's a little corrective there. There are a couple that don't, because for them, in their interpretation of some of the biblical directives, they would say, no, we can't. That we just can't do that. But most,
right.
Most major religions, in their moral worldview, don't have problems with it as long as it's done respectfully and all those things. So yeah.
And with my sister, we were still able to have an open casket.
Sure.
Open viewing. So it was done, respectfully.
Sure, and lovingly. But yeah, I do think it's an issue that many of us, in the large community would not necessarily have a problem or an issue with. Someone saying, I'd like to donate my organs to someone else, Real quick before we take a break now, I raised this, because I was just like, well, what about me? I've got diabetes and things like that. So, can I still be an organ donor even though I've got some physical issues of my own?
Yep, so anyone can register to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor, regardless of age, race, or medical history.
Okay, so we can register, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to take everything.
So like my sister, her lungs, she aspirated, so they weren't able to use those. But
okay, yeah, okay, good. Well, we're here talking with Marjorie Comer about organ donation. I keep wanting to say organ transplant. I don't know what my deal is today. But at any rate, we're going to be right back after a quick break. And this is Faith in Our Hometowns. Don't go away.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Okay, so we are back after that quick break, and we've been talking a little bit about organ donations. My guest this morning is Marjorie Comer, who is an ambassador for the Midwest Transplant Network. Midwest Transplant Network covers what kind of a region here?
Great question. So it covers all of Kansas and the western 2/3 of Missouri.
Okay. So St. Louis is left out of our region. They have
yep.
their own region.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, one of my high school classmates in St. Louis, his job for years and years has been to go around and to pick up the organs once they've been donated and to deliver them wherever they're supposed to get delivered to.
Wow.
So that's one of my high school classmates has been doing that for forever. I mean, just years and years he's been doing that. So it's kind of, interesting. When he first started doing it, we were just like, is that strange? And just talked about it a little bit and talked about how wonderful it was that he knew again that he was part of something that was taking something that was tragic and making it into something good. At least as good as you can get out of a bad situation.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what happened with your sister.
Yep.
She wanted to do that, and so even though you guys are in the midst of letting her go, she still was managing to help give life to some other people. So tell me, so when somebody can do that, an organ donor, I mean, so that affects. I mean, you listed several things, but how many different potential things could somebody do if they were willing to donate just whatever and just said take whatever you can?
So with an organ donor, you can, like I said, donate your heart, your liver, your lungs, your kidney, and your pancreas. Your kidneys.
Okay, so that's 5 major organs right there.
And then, your tissue, you can do your corneas, your heart valves, your skin, bone, veins, and tendons.
Wow.
Yep.
So I mean, potentially you can have one person, if they said take whatever works, and they can harvest. And please don't. And I hope nobody's freaked out by that term, but they can with this donation by a person. So if I did this, they could then take any of those usable things that might be able to help somebody else, and you could help 8-10 people. Yeah, which is amazing.
I believe the figure's up to 8 people, but more lives that you can impact, because by being a tissue donor. My sister, one of her eyes went to research in California, so who knows how many people that may actually end up helping or impacting.
And I've also had people, and this is a little bit on a different topic, but I've also had people, I know many religious sisters and everything who've donated their body to medical research and science, and some of those kinds of things. Again, this is something that we can only do as human beings. It's kind of a gift that you give other human beings. The other one I think about in terms of donation, of course, and it's one that that we probably don't talk about often enough either, is donating blood. To help somebody else. That's a gift again that only one human being can give another human being. And this is a gift that another human being can give another human being to do this. So this donor Sabbath that we're going to celebrate next Sunday, and again, maybe you're going to hear about it at church and maybe you won't. It just depends on whether somebody got to your pastor and whether your pastor is open that piece of mail. Sometimes we don't open every piece of mail because some of them look like solicitations or junk mail or whatever. But so if your pastor didn't get it, don't be mad at him. But what I'm going to say is that you can still donate and register, even if you don't do it at church. Okay, even if you don't get hold of this at church, you could still do it. So tell everybody how they might go about all that.
The website would be yestheywantme.com, and you can just go and you register online to be an organ donor. And no one can overturn my saying I want to be an organ donor. So my husband can't say, or my family later, they can't say, oh no, we changed, we don't want her to donate.
And again, that's just as sacrosanct as medical directives, which again, we've talked about before on the show. You all need to talk to your family members and get your medical directives in order so that your wishes are followed. And that's part of why they do the registering, right? Is so that everybody gets it down there and everybody knows. And so your physician knows, and and it needs to be in your, if you can remember to mention it in your advance directives, even better. Because then everybody understands and knows that those were your wishes. Because that's what we try to do for families at the end of life. We just try to make sure that we're doing what that person wants, and if that person wants to make that gift to somebody else, then they've got the right to do so and the right to do that. So that's how we do it. Yestheywantme.com is how they would register. Okay. The other thing I would just do is to say, it's a Sunday. For any of you that are out there that are prone to praying, I would just say it'd be a good thing today to say a little prayer of thanksgiving for next Sunday for all those organ donors that have made life possible. Can't you imagine any of those folks that your sister's life, saved? You can't imagine how many times they've said prayers at Thanksgiving, that heart was available, or that her pancreas was available, or whatever, those kinds of things. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. Her liver recipient, he said that he wears a bracelet. I wear my Donate Life bracelet, but he wears a bracelet that is copper, because that's one of the things that his disease. It had something to do with copper. I can't recall exactly but it's a reminder that it has his transplant date on it and Amanda's name. So he is always looking down at it, recognizing Amanda. But her heart recipient was able to walk her daughter down the aisle for her wedding, one of her daughters. Without Amanda, she wouldn't have been able to do that. Yeah. And there's also the option of being a living donor. You can donate part of your liver to someone.
Right.
And
it's another one of those human things that only one human being can do for another human being.
Yep.
I know other people have done kidneys, since everybody's got two and you can live with one. Some people have known other people, they've become the right tissue match to do those things. Those are just pretty selfless acts, either by the living or, at the end of life, which I think is really important. Now, is there, so is there any cost to being an organ donor or any of those things?
Nope. There's no cost to the donor or their family for being an eye or an organ or a tissue donor.
Yeah, so that's just all taken care of by the hospital and the network and all those kinds of things.
Yep. And then in Missouri, there's more than 2,000, I guess in Kansas and Missouri, more than 2,000 people that are on the waiting list for an organ transplant.
Yeah.
And of those, about 1,800 are kidney transplants.
Yeah. We got some parishioners at St. Peter's who, again, have been on lists, off lists, and, it's that whole, just watching families go through all of that is, it's grueling and it's edifying all at the same time, because of the faith of the people, they're involved in, but when, you know that you can make a difference in somebody's life to do that, it's an important moment. So there's no cost. Does it delay, for example, funerals or any of those things?
No, we did get a little bit of extra time with Amanda. They pronounced her brain dead on a Monday, and I don't think they took her until Wednesday, so that was just nice for us. We got to sit with her. I was pregnant, 5.5 months pregnant, with her first nephew. So for me, that was really difficult. I got to have her put her hand on my belly, because she hadn't seen me since I had announced that I was pregnant. So it was just kind of some time for us to have with her.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that's how it is for most people, but
I think that from my experience in any of the hospitals that I've been in, and all the pastoral care and the nursing staff, usually just all step up and make all those things possible, because what we're really trying to do in any of those health institutions and is really trying to help people, and we're caring and hoping to heal not just the person who might be in the bed, but also the other people who love them. And so giving you that time and allowing those things to happen. I know that, in one case, while they were waiting for other family members to arrive, they again, had, the body packed in, ice and, those kinds of things, not in a way that they couldn't reach the hands or see the face or to do those things, but just trying to make sure that everything was being preserved as long as they could. For the family to have the time that they needed in order to do those things. So, it usually doesn't affect anything in the hospital and shouldn't affect anything in terms of funeral plans. Certainly no cost. And again, I've just never seen anything or anyone done disrespectfully in 31 years of being a priest, I'm telling you, and working with hospitals and doing those things, that everything is done with love and with care, because really everyone in that community is just so grateful that a donor comes forward and wants to be able to do those things.
Well, I mean, 22 people typically die each day waiting for an organ donation. You know, it's not easy to give. It's not easy to receive. So the more people that we do have on the registry, the more lives that we can save. And you know, for us, like I said, it's been a blessing to be able to speak to her recipients, and you know, I know that it's a difficult conversation to have, you know, with your family members, but also, you know, talking with the recipients.
Because nobody ever, I mean, I'm going to say this as a minister here, nobody ever thinks they're going to die. And none of us make it out of here alive.
I mean, she was 25.
And you never think, when you're 25, you think you're immortal.
Right.
You know? And despite the faith part of that, which some of us do believe we're immortal, but, you know, on this side, yeah, that becomes a difficult thing. So, again, next Sunday, Donor Sabbath, and don't forget, if you want to register, one more time, it's Yes They Want Me, because they do, okay? YesTheyWantMe.com, all right? We'll be right back after this Mercy Minute.
The SANE program, or Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner program, is a program established to provide a coordinated, specialized care to patients who, or women or men, who've been the victim of sexual assault.
The SANE program is really designed to be a collaborative community response to sexual assault.
It's really important to make sure that it's not just the report or the forensic, but they get all of the testing that might be needed for their health.
It's also important to know that you don't need to know if you want to press charges or not. We don't get law enforcement involved unless you request it.
I just want to express to the victim that it is never your fault. You always have the right to say no, and that it's your body. So if you say yes one time, it doesn't mean every time.
I think it's important that sexual assault victims remember they've been victims of a crime, and crime victims do not pay for those services.
Well, again, thanks for joining us for another Sunday morning here at Faith in Our Hometown. We do appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your watching. We appreciate your comments that have been coming to us. Again, ideas for shows, keep them all coming our way. My guest this morning has been Marjorie Comer, and Margie is an ambassador for the Midwest Transplant Network. Next Sunday is what we call Donor Sabbath Sunday. Whether you hear about it in church or not doesn't matter, but if on that day, which many of us think is the Lord's Day, if you would like to make a gift of life to somebody else, you are welcome to do that by registering to be an organ donor. It is a gift that one human being can give another human being, and nobody else, or we can't get anywhere else. And so you can do that at YesTheyWantMe.com. YesTheyWantMe.com. So just think about it, pray about it, and that may be a gift of life that you can give someone else. Join us next week for Faith in Our Hometown. God bless you. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.